Thank you. Welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, February 6, 2019. It's 7:21 and we're starting the public hearings. Mary, who's here, please? Mary Taggart, Joe Liggett, Kenny Baptiste, Sandy Slavin, and Agent Dave Frechette. I thought I'd save you the time.
No problem.
Right,
Thank
to the public hearings, please, Mary.
Town of Wareham Conservation Commission, Memorial Town Hall, 54 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571. Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protection Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass, on Wednesday, February 6, 2019 at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Raymond and Joan Barrows, 111 Dean Street, Norton, Mass. 02766, to install a foundation under a portion of a single-family dwelling located on Assessors Map 11, Lot 6, 11 15th Street, Wareham, Mass. Wareham Conservation Commission, Sandy Slavin, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody here for this project? Come on up and identify yourself, please.
My name is Steve Gilbert, SFG
Thank you.
Surveyors and Engineers
But I
in
was
Lakeville,
looking-
Mass. Green cards.
Yep. Can you go back and say it in front of the mic so it can be picked up, please?
Steve Gilbert, SFG Engineers in Lakeville, Mass.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
The project site is 11 15th Street in Onset, and the project involves installing a concrete foundation under a portion of the existing cottage in the buffer zone to a coastal bank. An 11 by 14-foot foundation is to be installed under a portion of the existing cottage, and this would be approximately 80 feet from the top of the coastal bank. The foundation would be a poured concrete foundation. The coastal bank is on the other side of 15th Street from where the cottage is. The site is relatively flat and there's no grade changes proposed. An erosion control barrier is proposed around the work area. So I would recommend the approval of the project with a negative determination number 3.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, that pretty much works for me. Again, we're not expanding any of the footprint of the house, and most of the work will be coming off of 16th Street, all the materials, so, you know, we're not getting any closer than the 80 feet to the top of that bank.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Anybody in the audience would like to speak to for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Seeing none, make a motion to close the hearing.
A motion to close. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion, we close the hearing. Next.
Make a motion to approve a -3 determination.
I have a motion for a -3.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
Thank you.
Please see Mr. Bichette before you start any work.
Will do.
Okay, for the paperwork and whatever has to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you, I will. Okey dokey.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass, on Wednesday, February 6, 2019, at 7:15 p.m. on the amended order of conditions for the Buzzards Bay Coalition. Here, GAF Engineering, 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. 02571. To amend an order of conditions to allow plan changes to be approved. Onset Bay Center project located on Assessors Map 1, Lot 10480, West Boulevard, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you.
We can. Quite good. look at it.
both new.
This is an original.
Sorry.
You got
Please identify yourself for the record.
Brian Grady with GAF Engineering.
Mike Robotham with the Valley Group.
Thank you, Mr. Bichette. We'll read the changes being proposed.
The project site is at the Onset Bathhouse. The application is a request to amend the order of conditions to allow a plan change to the project. The original order of conditions was for the removal of the Onset Bathhouse structure and the construction of the proposed Onset Bay Center. This request is to amend the project plan to allow for several plan changes. One of the changes is to relocate the proposed water line for the new structure so that instead of it coming from the Onset Pier, it would now be proposed to come in from South Boulevard, as shown on the plan. It's also proposed to use this same pathway area that's highlighted in red on the plan to bring materials into the site as needed during the construction process. And again, that was not originally proposed. Also, an underground electric line would be installed in a separate trench as shown on the plan, again from South Boulevard to the building. There's also a request to be allowed to temporarily locate a crane on the beach in front of the bathhouse structure for bringing in materials. Construction mats would be placed on the beach for the crane to drive on. The crane would be removed at the end of the workday and parked on the town pier. The crane, as I'm told, would be needed for approximately 4 to 5 days, somewhere in the beginning of the project, and then for another 4 or 5 day stretch later on in the project. Also proposed is to be able to temporarily stockpile materials on the town pier during the construction process in the area designated on the plan. Again, this would be a temporary use of this area, and this would be on the existing paved surface. It's also proposed to install a temporary propane tank within the work area to provide fuel for the heat during the construction process. It's also shown on the plan to relocate a wash or rinse down area that apparently at some point was on the building, but they want to place it out into the concrete pad that's at the lower part of the existing structure. There wasn't really much detail provided with this, so on this element, I would recommend that the board seek some additional detail before approving that one feature. All the other features, in my opinion, are not significant changes from what was already approved in terms of potential impacts to the wetland resource areas. So I would recommend the issuance of the order of conditions to allow the proposed changes to proceed, with the exception of the washout area at this point, with the same conditions that were originally issued, and the added condition that all grass areas and/or walkways that are altered due to these new activities associated with the plan changes be restored as part of the completion of the project.
Yes, comments, please.
Yeah, Dave called me earlier this afternoon about his question with the rinse station. There was a rinse station shower on the existing bathhouse, so they're just looking to relocate that. After Dave called me, I called and spoke with Mike, and the plan is to relocate this rinse shower station to the area shown on the plan, get it off the building, put it out standalone. So what it would be, just a couple shower heads for people to rinse off the sand, the salt water. What we can do to try to address Dave's concern, and tell me if this is acceptable, is we're going to need to saw cut that concrete slab and to get the water line out there and to install the shower station. We can just, when we get to the shower station, cut out a larger section and put in a small flow well, probably dry well, with a grate up to the surface, and that concrete area that we cut out, we can just slope it to that drain and put it into the dry well right there underneath the shower. So I don't know what your thoughts are regarding that. I could get you some information tomorrow, what we're thinking about, if that seems reasonable.
What's the nature of things under that concrete? Is that just one solid block of concrete, or is it just like a cap with just sand under it, or what's the story with that?
The part that we've excavated, we found to be about a 3 to 4 inch cap with just sand underneath it.
Okay. So I guess that would be a question in terms of what potentially would happen with all the water draining out. Is it gonna wash out underneath that somehow? You know, that's a thing that we would just, I guess, want to have a better sense of.
Yeah.
And right now, it doesn't seem quite like there's a good understanding of how that might work or affect things there. Is this going to be something that's going to be running pretty constantly? I would imagine in the summer it probably would.
Yeah, I imagine it would run similar to what was being done with the building before, maybe a little bit more use. But I do know that when you take that cap off, the tide is regularly up and down inside that retaining wall already. So we can see the tide vary up from, we would dig down 4.5 feet to find it, and we could find it also, 2.5 feet. So water is regularly going up and down through those soils. So I'm not sure that this would have much of a different impact on that. Especially if we kind of pipe that dry well down to where the tide is already interacting. I'm not sure that it would, I don't think we'd experience a lot of washout from it, is I guess what I'm driving at.
Yeah, what it would be, it would just be it's a plastic dry well. You surround it with a little bit of stone, and you just have to backfill it properly. And once it's all backfilled properly and covered, the washout problem really isn't going to be an issue. And as far as usage, yeah, it's going to get use. I imagine what they'd have would be those automatic showers, not something where it has a switch that you could leave on. Little button that you push, comes on for 30 seconds or something like that and turns off automatically. So, if you're going to be there for a while, you have to keep pushing the button. You don't want some kid coming along, turning it on, and walking away.
Right.
So there are automatic buttons that you can do. It comes on, like in the restroom with the sinks, things like that. Comes on for a short period of time and turns off automatically. I imagine that's what they would want to use.
All right, so as I said, I'm comfortable with all the other changes. If the board wants to require some further detail, that would be my recommendation. If you are comfortable with Brian's description, then again, that's up to the board's discretion.
Questions from the board?
No.
Mary?
Not right now.
I'm comfortable with what I've heard so far on the outside shower.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna undermine it either.
Do you want the plan updated to reflect the dry well and other things that are going on around that shower head?
At a later date, sure, but that wouldn't hold me back from voting on it tonight.
Okay. Anybody in the audience would like to speak to or for this particular change in the order of conditions? Seeing none?
All right, does anybody else want to vote on this, or do you want to continue it, or changed plans to reflect that, or
Mary,
you want to just
Do you
exclude
want to
it?
see the plans updated?
I think I can follow his explanation of it. It's not quite easy.
I can provide an updated narrative and some detail, spec sheet of the flow well or something like that, and get that to you.
Okay.
Dave, would you feel comfortable if we condition that for your approval?
Sure.
Okay. Everybody else feel comfortable with that?
Yes, so.
Okay, I'll
if
make a
you
motion to close the hearing.
I have a motion to close the
Second.
hearing. I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Further make a motion.
Wait a minute, opposed, abstained, we'll close the hearing.
Okay, further make a motion to accept the order of amended order of conditions, with a stipulation that the disturbed areas with the grassy areas and stuff like that be restored upon completion, and on condition of Agent Dave actually receiving a better detailed plan on the shower station.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? 3 days before you start digging the trenches.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. On Wednesday, February 6, 2019, at 7:15. On the notice of intent of Wareham Solar Systems Incorporated, Peter Beals and Thomas Incorporated, 32 Fort Street, Plymouth, Mass. 02360, to construct a ground-mounted solar array located on Assessors Map 106, Lot 1002, 299 Farm Market Road, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Please come forward and identify yourselves.
Good evening, everyone. Zach Farkas, Borrego Solar. With me, Stacy Minhan from Beals and Thomas.
Hi.
I like these small ones. Definitely ice.
Okay, Mr. Bichette will speak to the project.
Are there any abutters cards, or is it all Makepeace? as
It
an
is
abutter?
all Makepeace for this one.
The solar farm. Solar farm expansion.
The project site is at 299 Farm to Market Road, and the project involves the installation of a solar array within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and to an inland bank. A 3.5 megawatt solar array is proposed within the buffer zone to existing cranberry bogs.
So I've got to go back to.
The clearing work for this project at the site has already been done within the buffer zone without an order of conditions. So at this point, the proposed array has already cleared the area for where it's proposed. The proposal shows some of the work for the project to be located within the 50-foot no-activity zone to the wetland. I would recommend revisions to the plan to remove the elements of the project from being within the 50-foot no-activity zone, with the exception of the underground electrical lines that would be installed within the existing bog roads. The project is to be reviewed by the town's engineer. That review has not been completed at this point. We also did not receive a DEP file number for the project as of yet, so I would recommend a continuance of the hearing to the next meeting for town engineer's review, revised plans, and for the DEP file number.
Okay. Zach, Stacy, whichever, you're up. Would you like to make comments, please?
Sure. Zach, do you want me to give an overview? All right. Yes, and so we met with Dave and Sandy on the site. Thanks for meeting us out there. We did touch base with Jim, who is traveling, regarding the tree clearing, and I think he'll be in touch when he's back next week. In terms of the project work, the work within the 50, we had submitted requesting a waiver since it was the 50-foot to a cranberry bog, and largely across from or within kind of existing sand track disturbed areas. But I think, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, we're fine.
Yep, we're gonna, as
Yep.
Dave requested, we're gonna take a look at the design after we get the peer review comments, after we take into account comments from the board or the public, to kind of incorporate everything in one revision, and certainly looking at pulling the fence and perhaps some of the racks out of the 50-foot setback is something we'll look at very seriously.
So otherwise, I mean, I can give a quick overview of the project if helpful. This sheet here shows the panel area itself, and then you can see to the southeast, there's an underground electric conduit that runs down. That runs down through existing bog roads to the transmission easement that's to the south, which is on the second sheet of the plan set. But beyond that, I think Dave summarized the issues, and we're happy to answer questions.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I'm still thinking.
So right now, within the 50-foot, most of it's the fence,
That's right.
with one little panel here and there.
Correct.
There's already an embankment there. There's already trees.
So we'll hear from Jim when he returns regarding the clearing ahead of time.
Yeah,
The early clearing.
we've spoken to Jim. Unfortunately, he's away, or he'd be here this evening, but he'll certainly be in touch with you, Dave, and the board to talk about what went on, what the assumptions were and whatnot. The direction we got from a solar development standpoint was don't clear any trees, understanding that the trees were already down, but we recognize that it's something that needs some attention.
Yes, Mr. Bichette took a look at the project using whatever that system is, Google, GIS, then looked at it currently, then looked at it prior, and he found even one of the pictures showing the logging going on. Was it, 6 months ago to a year?
It was almost a year ago. It was basically the end of February.
Yeah, I looked today as well with the timeline. I think I was gonna say February 2nd, but maybe it was the end of February 2017 for that image.
It was cleared a year ago, right, if I'm hearing that correctly?
2018.
About that.
I'm sorry, 2018, yes.
Any questions on the board on this project?
That's the only thing that bothers me is the fact that it was started without permits.
Just to be clear, the project itself wasn't started. I think, like I said, Jim will speak to the board or communicate to this effect, but the area is being harvested for overwintering sand for the bogs in the Makepeace facilities. So the thought wasn't that we're gonna do solar, it was we're continuing with our agricultural operations, and then as we move forward, we identified this as one of the sites and basically kind of puzzle pieced our site to fit the disturbed area as it was about a year ago.
No, I understand agriculture. I understand it's exempt. But when the thought process was changing, that should have been addressed before. Everything should have stopped, and that should have been taken care of before any work was done.
Understood.
That's the only problem I have with it. Next.
I don't have any questions really per se at this moment because it's gonna be continued and probably come back with some changes and stuff like this. Just got a reminder, I'm kind of a stickler on that 50-foot work zone. I've turned down projects because of that before, even though I might have been the only one, but.
Dave was very clear when we were on
Take that
site.
into consideration. The trenching in the roadway, that, I have no problems with that.
Yeah, one point about the trenching is we committed to Dave on the site walk that trenching would mainly be on the upland side of the road wherever possible. And as you can see from the site layout, we can do a pretty good job keeping that trench on it would be either the eastern or the southern side of the road, just to minimize anything. But after that,
50 foot though, that's a biggie.
thank you.
I agree with Joe, that's a big concern, is the 50-foot down.
Great.
Is there any questions from the audience for or against this project? There's no audience, other than here for your own projects.
All right, seeing
I
none.
was surprised that the land that had been cleared had not been disturbed for harvesting sand. Is that correct? There was still trunks, tree stubs and stuff like that still in the land, so,
In some parts.
in some parts, so, but I'll take a motion to continue until,
Do you want to go to the 6th of March,
or
or?
are you good for 2/20 for a continued hearing?
We'll be good for 2:20.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor of continuing till 2:20, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, and we'll see you here on the 20th.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have some continued hearings. Robert and Mary Ellen Stone.
220. She begins. Now, who did that?
I'll take credit for it.
I know it's upside down.
Hey, Mr. Bichette will speak to this project?
Oh, Kennedy Street.
Oh, yeah, can you identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure. I am Robert Stone. This is Mary Ellen Stone. We own property at 12 Kennedy Street.
Michael Silva with MJS Architecture.
Thank you.
So to discuss the project, the site is at 12 Kennedy Street in the Rose Point area, and the project involves the demolition of an existing dwelling and potentially the reconstruction of a new dwelling along a coastal bank within the riverfront area of the Weweanick River and within a coastal flood zone. The existing dwelling is very near the top of the coastal bank. The proposed house footprint would be larger than what currently exists and would result in a new project within the 30-foot no activity zone to the coastal bank. At the last meeting, we kicked around some different ideas on this, all of which would ultimately require a notice of intent to be submitted, but I think the goal of the applicant was just to get a sense from the board of what they might be willing to entertain. At that last meeting, we didn't have the detail about the 30-foot no activity zone line, and it looks like we are given a new plan tonight which has more detail on that. This is the first I'm seeing of that, so we can all take a look at that, I guess, and hear the description from the applicant and then make some assessments from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's the 30-foot line from here.
Your turn.
Michael do it.
What you're seeing in front of you on the left site plan is the existing, which is what we proposed last week, or last meeting. Based on the recommendations of the board, we had removed, or actually pushed the house back 10 feet, which was requested, showed the 30-foot setback lines, which actually isn't a straight line. There happens to be a little peninsula there that is why those two arcs, we were thinking it was in line with the house next door. So in some areas, it's actually further back than the 30 feet. And at the 30-foot mark is our larger construction that, is outside of that 30-foot buffer. And at the last meeting, we were, it was suggested that we could use a portion of the existing footprint to build our new construction, staying within the setback on the left side and being in line with the existing construction on the right, and then sort of just connecting back toward our new house construction. It's actually back a little further than the 10 feet. I'm going from the existing to the overhang, which is a foot, so the actual construction is almost 10 and a half to 11 feet back from the existing location.
Anything to add?
Well, I think the basic sense of, as we talked about last week, so, I'm sorry?
Looking forward to the mic.
Oh, sorry. I think the basic, is to get an intent from the board, so we're not here like some of the other people, and we want to come up front and say, what is your feeling on this? As you can see, we have the existing structure there. We, bandied about rebuilding on the existing footprint. It's a little closer than even I would like the existing footprint, so this is, moving it back some. Really to, we didn't want to sort of create that tunnel effect by moving them all the way back to where the other houses were. And so I guess it's really to get a sense from the board how they feel about that. Obviously, there's an overlap there where it is within the 30-foot zone, but,
We were thinking that 30-foot was right in line with the other, but as I say, that arc portion,
Surprised you, huh?
yeah, it did, but it actually helped out. I mean, considering if we were to balance that out and just make it clear across, we're actually, I think in square foot terms as to what we're over, we're a little better off than what we actually would have been in terms of encroaching into that 30-foot mark. But yes, in total,
Questions on the board?
No. Joe?
Just the way I'm looking at it, what I see, that they're taking up 10 foot, what is it, about 24 foot wide?
20-foot wide, 26, so it's coming back.
Yeah,
10
so
feet.
you're taking that much out of that area, and you're actually you're gonna use up a little bit less than that up here,
Right.
that's right.
so. I just look at that as at least that's a net gain
Mm-hmm.
for adding more.
Yeah, we're pushing everything back as, that 10 feet, but the stairs, the porch, everything's coming back, and including the overhang. And we're getting out of that side yard setback, so.
I see what you've
yeah.
done there. No, so I look at that as almost like a net gain on square footage actually being preserved in there.
Mary, a question?
Oh, the building inspector.
They like the improvement that they made, is an improvement on the coastal
Yes.
back.
Kenny?
If I may also.
What much else they can do, other than to reduce the size of the building itself?
Based on our last meeting, one of the recommendations was to see the building inspector, which I actually brought that plan to him and explained about the meeting and what we were doing. And he said that as long as conservation was on board with what we're showing, anything beyond that 30-foot buffer, as long as we're within the 25% lot coverage, where he has no problems with what he sees here.
Dave, any comments on it? I know you're seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, the only question I have is, this hashed-in darker area, which is the proposed new footprint, that's including any decks, any stairs, anything
That's
of that
complete
nature?
that's the line of construction, whereas in the last meeting, it was, I forget the chair that was sitting here. He had said, that the deck area was part of that construction. So this is where that construction will start, including decks, balcony, everything. And that border line that you see around that hatched area is actually a 1-foot overhang. So it's including the overhangs as well.
This darker area, you mean?
The darker area closer to the water, not the arced piece.
No, yeah, just the light darker gray zone, which is the overall box, I'm assuming, of the house.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's including the overhang?
That's including, yes,
So the foundation would actually be a foot inside of
So
that?
this is gone.
actually, this is the exterior wall of the house. This is a 1-foot overhang,
So that is, okay.
which is, this side's holding that side yard setback at 1 foot.
So the line we're looking at is this outer line for the foundation?
That's right, and where that is, that's 10 feet from here back to the existing house. If we went to the existing overhang, would actually be 10, 6, almost 11 feet back. But I'm taking our overhang to the actual structure as opposed to the existing
Yep.
overhang.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
I guess the question is, are you comfortable enough to have to file a notice of intent, right? We need a notice of intent?
Right. That's what would be
That's
required.
being asked of us, is what we're seeing here, would we approve?
When they file their
When they
notice of
file a
intent.
notice of
Yeah, would
intent.
the board be comfortable
Is
with
that-
this layout?
That's right. We want to, before we get into designing and actually layouts of what's here, this would be our building footprint. And within that, we'd like to see if this would satisfy the board for us to actually proceed with this footprint.
I could support it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't
No
have.
decks.
I don't
Yeah.
think it requires a vote, just indicate that you have support from 4 of the members.
Okay, all
I
right,
guess your next point is to not come back with a notice of intent for this structure.
that's correct, yeah.
Did I-
So what the board would need to do as part of this hearing is close the hearing and then vote to issue a positive determination, which
Okay.
is what requires filing a notice of intent.
Right, and any decks or anything.
number?
Any building or structure, decks or anything would be within that footprint.
We'd want to be filing a positive number 3 and number 5.
All right, anybody in the audience would like to comment on this particular project? Seeing none,
Motion to close.
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained?
Motion for positive determinations, number 3 and 5, and
Motion,
Second?
I have a second, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed, abstained? I guess you moved to the next step.
Very good, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Hope you all feel better.
Yeah, and I was the guy sitting on it. I remember this one now.
Keep those sheets?
You can actually take these, because this
Yeah,
is
you
really technically part of the filing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okey dokey, we have another continued hearing, Mercy's Brum. They have requested a continuation until 2:20.
So moved?
I have a motion, I have a second to continue. All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed, abstained? That is now continued until 2:20.
220?
2:20. All right, next. We have certification of compliance. David, would you like to comment on something?
No, I was hoping to be here early. So, we get our laptop. No, I just hope you will.
What?
Consider it.
Dave, come up and I'd put yourself in the speaker so we can get you on tape, please.
I rushed here for I just wanted to speak in favor of approving that amendment.
Oh, so
The
I'll let you
amended
know.
order of conditions.
We have dealt with that
Good.
particular project, and we have approved the amendment, the conditions that have been amended
Good.
for the electrical and water line location. and
Wonderful.
Temporary storage place, so we're done with that project. and
Okay,
closed
that's
it.
fine. And I apologize, I wanted to be here earlier, but I just couldn't get here.
We
But
know, you're busy.
thank you so much.
Everything went well.
Yeah.
Good, good.
There was no objection to the changes that were proposed, so we went through very quickly.
Good.
Thank you for
Okay,
coming. Nice seeing you again.
nice to see you.
We have a certification of compliance.
This project was over at 11 Broad
Don't you
Marsh
love those
Ave in
wires?
the Swiss Beach area.
Above those wires.
This was for a demolition of a house and a reconstruction of a new house, and a retaining wall. The project initially had a retaining wall that really wasn't constructed according to the plan we approved. We required them to reconstruct it, which they have done, and so everything is in order at this time. So I'd recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
All right. Need a
to
motion?
issue.
I have a motion to issue. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, we're on to enforcement orders.
Yeah, any of the enforcement orders are just on there in case anybody had any questions or comments or anything. I didn't really have any new updates on these at the moment, so I don't really have anything to add on those issues at this point, unless anybody else has something they wish to bring up or add.
We did a visit on Monday to that piece of property down by the marina. You want to comment on it? That big project to clear out
yeah, the seawall reconstruction. Yeah, we did stop by a site where we approved a project on Prospect Street. This was,
Camadeus?
yes, it was a site where the existing retaining wall was made out of old tires and every other thing in the world. But that project is coming along. When they first started it, they didn't quite follow the order and contact me, and so the owner got a fine for that, because they didn't have certain things in place that they were supposed to have prior to starting, and there was some erosion that occurred. But that has since been corrected, and the project is now proceeding the way it's supposed to be. And it's coming along pretty nicely, even though it looks like it's a huge project.
It's a challenge.
It
Yeah,
most certainly is the size of the walls, the retaining walls are, but there's still some few more tires in that wall, in that sand and stuff, so I'm sure that they're continuing to uncover more tires as they do more digging.
right.
But,
But they are on the right track now with that, so that's good.
and it was nice visiting them on a warm day as opposed to a wet, rainy, cold day, so. Foggy, but that's beside. Okay, Nick, other business, anybody want to talk about the MACC annual conference? Anybody going?
Yeah, I just put that on. If anybody is interested, just let me know. That way I can get the paperwork in order. You don't have to tell me tonight, but if you could take a look at that and maybe decide by the end of next week and let me know what your thoughts are, and one way or the other, that way I can get it in the works if anybody is interested in wanting to
The
go.
paper was included in last meeting's folder. Okay. Anything else on the other business?
Nope.
I'm seeing none. The magic words, please.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
You
Opposed,
moved in second
abstained.
at once, huh?
Thank you, thank you.